Justice plays an important role, especially on a campus such as Loyola. University President Father Linnane addressed the issue at the Commitment to Justice lecture. I'm Allison Nuara, and I sat down with Father Linnane to talk about justice, the role it plays on a college campus, and his views about the topic. I want to thank you again so much. I know that a lot of students wouldn't have this opportunity to speak with the president, so thank you.
My pleasure.
How do you suppose that students can come to terms and understand justice while they're in college and they're trying to evolve as individuals themselves?
I think that they need to really begin to develop sort of the principles that will guide them to understanding how to make a judgment about justice. That in a way that's related to the sort of the virtue of prudence, of which is really knowing the right thing to do in a particular situation, and that's what you're testing in your academic life and in your personal life and in your service. A very key issue in our day is marriage equality, and now it's presented as a matter of justice. Well, how do you get at that real issue? One of the things that you do is to think about, what are the principles that guide me? It's always treat persons, yourselves and others, as ends in themselves and never as means only. So it's that sense that you treat every person simply because they're a person of inviolable dignity, and you can never act so as to use a person to promote your ends. That means to use them as an object. Persons are always subject and therefore bearers of rights.
How did you arrive at understanding what justice means to you?
I think that there are two influences on me that certainly what we call the Catholic social thought, which really has its roots in the late 19th century with Pope Leo XIV and his what's called the social encyclicals. And this grounds a Catholic thought in this notion of the common good. And the common good suggests that the well-ordered society is that society that first looks to those who are most in need, those who are most on the margin. And the idea is not simply charity, but that our common security and our common well-being depends on the security and well-being of those who are materially poor. Secondly, I think that in my own studies, that the work of John Rawls and his really landmark book, A Theory of Justice, I think it came out in 1970. It's still a very important book, or at least it was the last time I taught, which is a while ago now. And his whole notion, his formal understanding of justice as fairness, that circumstances and the conditions of social life are such that the playing ground is level, and so that people can succeed not on an equal basis. It's not socialism, but that no one is held back because of his or her position, but that everybody has a chance to get a fair share of society's goods.
You just mentioned that the commonwealth of the whole of the community, that is one of the ways you would describe justice. How do you feel that fits with the Loyola community?
One would hope that our own relations within the university, and that would be the professors, the administrators, the staff, the students, that all of our relations were characterized in a way that would be just and that would be fair, and for example, that long before I came to Loyola, we were committed to a living wage. Are you familiar with living wage? It's there's a minimum wage that the law requires that we pay persons, but that the living wage suggests that to live in Baltimore, the minimum wage is not really adequate to raise a family of four. So that we make a commitment to make sure that those who are at the bottom of the pay scale get this minimum wage. So I think that that's a piece that our rules and our regulations are characterized by fairness and by transparency, and that as an institution, we resolve to be a force for good in the community. I think that that's why we, so many of our students, it's really part of our culture, are engaged in service beyond our campus and service within our campus, like what you are doing. And then the university enters into partnerships with community enterprises to try to make our common life better, and particularly to give those who haven't had the advantages that many of us have by attending a university like Loyola, to kind of help them get a leg up to have that sort of experience.
You also said at your address that it's important for educators to help engage students in appreciating and cultivating both social and individual virtues. You kind of touched on that just now, but how do you believe that the Jesuit values of this institution make it possible for those two ideas to mesh?
We want you to understand, and I think that we get this across, that your success as a leader absolutely depends on ethics. When you talk about ethics or virtue in the Greek, you're talking about an excellence. And so that we want you to be excellent in all of these things. And one of them is the justice and values or ethics, because you can't be a successful leader without an ethical compass. And it's not simply that education to prevent you from getting into trouble with the law, but that we want you to see the wider picture, that we believe that, doing well and doing good, sort of like they come together, that really makes for the success. It's not just about me, it's about the people I work with and the people I work for. I just thinking that there's a book called Heroic Leadership. The guy who wrote it was a Jesuit, and he left and worked for J.P. Morgan and became a managing partner. And then he wrote this book on the lessons that the Jesuit order could give the corporate world, because he sees us as the longest lived corporation in the history of the world. And the first lesson is love those who work for you, that it's the superior's job in the Jesuit world to love his subjects. And because when you love them, you can look out for their well-being and see them. Not that it's easy to love everybody, but it is a fundamental Christian commandment. And so that you want to see, it is the fundamental Christian commandment, you want to see what God sees in each individual. And when you see God's image in that person, you have to work for his or her best.